Hello friends, this is Worm here with Mismatched Gameplay today to talk about the Citadel, the new Crucible map that was recently returned to Destiny 2. For those of y'all who don't know or didn't play back in the day, it was removed in, I want to say it was Beyond Light 2020, because Bungie, I guess, needed to make more room for other maps and stuff. So it was removed from the game, but it came back exactly how it was back in 2020 and before 2020. So I kind of wanted to talk about how it plays in Destiny currently versus how it did back in the day. Unfortunately, I don't have any gameplay of me playing on the map back in the day. I also don't have any of me playing on the gameplay currently, but it's the new one that takes place in the Dreaming City. The map itself, first of all, of course, aesthetic wise, it looks fantastic. I think there's no doubt about that. But the map itself is a 3-lane symmetric map. It's not perfectly symmetric. There are some slight differences between the two sides, but for the most part, the map is basically symmetric, divided straight down the middle of the map, which is where the B flag is. Both sides spawn near their home flag, and then B flag is on the outside lane, which I'd say is where the primary gunfights take place. But yeah, I wanted to talk about it because I think that it's great to have it back, but I definitely think that there's still some issues with it, right? But let's talk about, first of all, the different modes that I played in the Citadel. Of course, Control, that's my primary, that's where I'm primarily at. During the week, I'm playing Control, but I also did play some Comp in here. And I want to talk about Comp first because I think that Comp is a little bit easier to cover when it comes to this map. Comp, it's actually a pretty good map for Comp, right? Like the 3-lane setup that it has doesn't cater, to snipers very much, or really anything long range. You can effectively use long range weapon, but it doesn't cater to long range too much. And of course, with the division of the 3 lanes, it's typically flowing players together, right? If you have one player going down one side and another going down the other, it's easy to dissect a team so that you can face, one at a time or just 2 at a time instead of all 3 at once. So on this map in competitive, I think it's definitely best to stick together, which I'd say is a general rule of thumb with competitive anyways. But flanks are difficult to pull off on this particular map, and it's because it's got that 3-lane setup. As for the action of 3v3 or the Comp playlist, I think the action is right where it needs to be. I think this was a wonderful map to bring back for the actual combat action. None of these areas are extremely large. Take something like multiplex, for example, which I don't think multiplex is in the 3v3 or in competitive or any of the 3v3 playlists. But take multiplex, for example. It's got huge, massive, wide open areas. You don't have that on this map. Everything is pretty close knit together. You have a couple of lanes where if you wanted to effectively use a sniper, you can definitely do it. I've used Cloud Strike multiple times. I've got multiple doubles and triples on this map. But in terms of the 3v3, I think that it's really optimized for 3v3. And I think the reason why this is because, lest I be mistaken, this map came at a time when Destiny was only 4v4. Like the standard Crucible mode was 4 players versus 4 players. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it came after that, but I really can't remember. It's been a long time. But with that said, the 3v3 playlist, I think it plays wonderfully. There is a glaring issue though, kind of the issue on several other maps that I see inside of the 3v3s. Of course, if you are, if the enemy team pushes you and you flip the spawns, you're kind of screwed, right? And this is not uncommon for a bunch of maps, especially those linear, 3-lane maps, stuff like that. If you die and your 2 teammates are kind of pushed back in their spawn and the enemy's encroaching on you, you're going to spawn on the opposite side of the map. So it's going to dissect your team way far apart. And it's really easy to kind of steamroll over teams like that. If you can figure, if you have a team that's good enough to push into their spawn and kind of push them back further and further, you're going to break up their team and stuff. Another major issue specifically with competitive playlist is the fact that this map, the ends of each map, the spawn ends of each map go way back, way deeper in my opinion than they should, right? Like when you spawn in, at the initial spawn of the game, the very first spawn of the game, you spawn within 10 meters of the A flag or B flag in Control. But whenever you die, you can spawn pretty far back there, and you got to do this long run to get to B, blah blah blah. The map goes even further back than that. And one of the issues that I had in a couple of games was players would, in survival, they would essentially get to a point where they would win life advantage and they would run all the way back, like as far back as they could. And by the time we'd spawn, I mean, we wouldn't even have time to get across the map to where they're hiding at. And of course, this is not exclusive just to Citadel, but it is one of the problems I would like to see fixed. I would like to see, you know, condensing the map a little bit. There's no reason to have such a deep map. You should not really be going all the way to the back. It's like Disjunction. You don't need to go all the way to the very back of Disjunction. It's the same thing on this map. Bring that line up closer. I think it'd be really perfect within competitive. But let's talk about sixes here, because I think sixes is a little bit more a little bit weirder, because back in the day, I remember Citadel was a pretty decent map. You know, the spawns, and we'll talk more about spawns in just a second, but the spawns were a little bit wonky. But at the same time, it was a pretty fun map. But fast forward to the sandbox that we're in, like the metas that we're in currently, I'm not sure it's playing as well as Bungie would hope, or as well as I would hope as a Crucible player, you know? So of course, the B flag spawns on the outside lane. Like if you're spawning on C, it spawns on the right side. If you're on A, that's the left side of the map, right? So what ends up happening is, and I looked for a map to show on screen here. I can't find any like layout or maps of the Citadel. So unfortunately don't have that, but B is on one lane, then you have the middle, and then you have the right lane. And one of the biggest like issues, I guess, you know, that I have with this layout is it really makes the map feel like almost like a C shape, right? Like kind of like an arch, like this shape right here, right? You have A, you have C spawn here, A spawn here, B here. There are two lanes, one through the middle, and then one that would technically go like under, kind of like that. And they don't really get used quite as much. And we'll kind of talk about the flow of the map here for a little bit. Of course, when the game starts, most players are running to get B. B is in that little gazebo on the outside. Now, B has some really good sniper lanes out there. Like if you can get there quick enough, you can get some pretty decent coverage, right? B is widely unprotected. Like there is a certain area you can stand within that little gazebo thing to cap B safely. But if you are pushed by enemies, that's not going to bode well for you, right? At any rate, that's where like 90% of the action takes place, right? Then you move to the inside area, and the inside area actually I feel is a pretty decent room. Like it's got a lot of height to it, but it's not something that you could go in with like a long range weapon and do well, right? Like pulse rifles don't fare as well. You know, scout rifles in this middle room don't fare as well. In fact, SMG, shotguns, sidearms are really the weapons that are going to be king in this close range area. And of course, you can go into the middle and you can flow out straight towards B. And that's one of the techniques that you can use if you're, you know, in a situation where you're not able to break away. But you know, the primary point of conflict, I guess, being on the edge of the map where the B flag is, that feels a little bit weird to me, because there's still a lane all the way on the opposite side that I never use. I rarely see anybody go down it. I think the one time that I actually went down it, it's like I was able to push all the way back into the enemy's spawn, right? But unfortunately, because of how deep those spawns go, they're still spawning back there. Like it's a really weird layout. But that inside lane doesn't really get used very often that I have seen. Now, of course, you know, that's just me. Maybe you frequently go that route. I don't know. But I think that's having the B on the outside of the map. Well, it's neat. It's cool. I think it would be a lot more fun to have B centered, right? It's like right in the middle. You know, you've got the three lanes. B is already in the middle, so to speak, between, you know, A and C. It's right in the middle of A and C. I think it'd also be cool to have it in that middle room right there, because that would be quite a fight, right? Like you could go on the outside to go in. You could go on the inside, so to speak, to get into that room. But the B flag being right there, I feel like would be just a little bit of a better place for it to be, you know. Because then your snipers could go on that outside lane. They could snipe stuff like that. But your players who like to play more close range, you know, hand cannons, of course, shotguns, submachine guns, auto rifles, sidearms, stuff like that, could also fare well in that middle area. And one of the praises I do have to give to this map is the fact that it can cater to all play styles. Like, you can sit with a scout rifle and do very well. You can play with a pulse rifle, a sidearm, like I said, a submachine gun, like any weapon you want to use, you can use it effectively on this map, which is a really good thing. I just think that having that B flag be on the inside of the map would be a little bit better, a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more energetic, I guess. Because that leads me on to the next point here, which is one of the, I guess you could say, kind of one of the problem points. And this is due to spawns as well as due to the flag location and stuff like that. But, and it's also not exclusive to the Citadel, but what happens if you have a team that knows what they're doing? They will you'll cap B, and you can stay very close to B in that middle area, and it forces enemies to like push in to you, and you can dig in if you are near B, you know, because there's like a U shape around B, right? So there's like a, you know, you got the gazebo, then you got the edge of the map, like, so let's just say like down here's the edge of the map, there's the gazebo right here in the middle, and up here is where you have this U shape. Players can stand in that U shape and be basically completely protected from other players unless those other players rush in. And it's the same thing like on Wormhaven, for example. If you get control of that B area and you don't let people in, like, it's difficult to break that. And I don't really know how Bungie could change that. And that's probably part of the charm that comes from the map, because if you can lock up that area, like, you will win, right? And then you or your teammates will get headstrong and start pushing to the you know, into their spawn, and they flip the spawns, you know, and you got this big old mess. But you know, that's kind of, I don't want to call it an issue, but like, I would like to see that change, because there are times when you have a team of just people who don't really know what they're doing. It's very difficult to break even one or two people in that area, right? Because, you know, okay, one person runs in, they get killed by two people in there. I mean, if you're not pushing as a coordinated effort, again, same thing on any map, but if you're not pushing as a coordinated effort, it's a difficult task to overcome. Another kind of, I guess, issue that I have with the map is, of course, the deep spawns. And when I say the deep spawns here, I mean the fact that, number one, when you spawn, the first time you die, you're gonna spawn so far away from B, and not in a linear sight line of it, but the fact that you have to run through the map, you know, typically where the spawn is, you have to run through the map and then go left all the way around or right all the way around, because there's no doorway. They got that little porthole, right? And the porthole is really cool. You can technically, like, if you time it perfect, you can jump up and slide through that little hole, but that's not something I think most players are going to be able to do on the regular. I can't even do it regularly. I get it every now and then, but you have to go around, and it feels like it takes unnecessarily long. It's the same complaint I had with Disjunction when it initially came to the game, is it just takes way too long to get to the action. And then when you get to the action, it's kind of problematic, because now you have to dig these enemies out, and your reinforcements are spawning way off in the back. So if your teams die, they take forever to get there. And of course, if the enemy team is holding B, they're kind of spawning, you know, they're spawning a lot closer. So they, you know, they're not spawning all the way in the very back of C flag or A flag, you know, whichever one it is. Like, if the enemy team holds C and B, their players are spawning a lot closer to C than they are players that are spawning close to A, like close to, you know, players are spawning at A are spawning way back away from A. So they have this, you know, there's almost this, you know, double distance that you have to go if you don't hold the B flag, which again, it is control, you know, and you, I guess, theoretically should be rewarded for holding flags. But I think that, you know, again, that long run, that's not fun, right? Breaking out of it is not fun, but at least breaking out of it, there is engagement and gameplay to it. When I have to run from the spawn back there and then do this little thing around the left and then loop and do all this, that's where it's kind of annoying. And I think that Bungie could fix this by just adjusting spawns so they spawn closer to the A flag instead of that deep like back area in the very back of the map. Because when you spawn closer to A, you can actually run out, like right through A or right out through C towards B, and you can get into the action faster. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the map it's pretty fun. It does, like I said, it caters to all different play styles, which I think it's fantastic. You know, like we have maps like Multiplex, for example. Multiplex does not cater to close range engagements almost at all. You know, we have maps like, you know, Anomaly. Anomaly only caters to close range gameplay. Like if you are using a sniper on that map, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. If you're using a sniper, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. But on this map, you can use basically anything effectively, which I think is a hallmark of a good map, right? But with that being said, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to give some thoughts on it. Definitely not one of my favorite maps. I think that if Bungie just adjusted the spawns a little bit to make them more, you know, number one, you don't have to run quite as far, number one, and number two, like have spawns be equal. Like if your team's holding B, still spawn back, you know, if you're not going to change the spawns at all, spawn them way back behind C, right? Then they have to run all the way back up to B. That way you can have this power struggle, you know, okay, one team is pushing in, they cap B, you know, then a couple of them die. Well, they spawn so far back, they have to run up there now, so then the enemy can push in, cap B, and it's just kind of this constant tug of war. And, you know, unless you have players that really know what they're doing. Because again, I think players who really know what they're doing should be rewarded by holding an area, right? They should not be able to hold an area just because of the fact that they're spawning a lot closer to said area than the other team who's spawning a mile away from it. But yeah, that's Citadel. That's all I really wanted to say. Of course, I want to hear your thoughts on it. Did you play it back when Forsaken dropped? Oh, you know what? I think I was mistaken earlier. I think Citadel was after 6v6. Sorry. Maybe I'll edit that out. Maybe I won't. But yeah, that's it for me. Tell me about your thoughts on Citadel. Do you like it? Do you hate it? How do you want to, what would you want to see change? All that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's it for me. I will see you on the next one. Oh yeah, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it at all. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, and do me a favor, watch these videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason YouTube thinks you will like them. Guys, I will see y'all next time. Bye for now.